Welcome back to OnChain Revolution. My name is Yagobi, and I am the host of this channel and show. I hope you guys had an amazing and blessed weekend. Over here in DFW, it got cold in March, which is absolutely weird. But I hope you guys had a good weekend. Mine was pretty good, but a lot of stuff happening in the space heading into the start of the week, right? So we got Bitcoin starting the week off very, very strong, recapturing $74,000 this morning as oil kind of retraced a little bit, right? And so we're still trying to figure out what's going on with Bitcoin, how people are perceiving Bitcoin, especially in these, really tough macro environments, but also geopolitical. And there's some interesting information that came out of is continually coming out of this Iran war situation of how people are viewing gold and Bitcoin, and we're definitely going to get into that. We're going to talk about potentially where Bitcoin's heading in the near future. Very, very interesting to see it, continually show strength here, but I don't want you guys getting too excited because we recaptured 74,000, because the hour time frames don't really matter, right? It's more about how it finishes the daily time frame, and that's what we're going to get into as well. Also, some other headlines across the cryptoverse. We got Tether coming out with a little tease saying that they have a big AI release this week, and we're going to talk a little bit, speculate a little bit about what that could potentially be. I couldn't find too much, but a little bit of stuff online hinting towards maybe what they're talking about there. And then we're also going to get into what I mentioned earlier about how people are perceiving Bitcoin and gold during this Iran conflict, right? Also, AI data centers are really attractive right now to Bitcoin miners, right? So what does that mean? Is it going to impact Bitcoin mining? I know we've talked a little bit about that on the show, but I think it's important to continually have that conversation. And we got a little article from Cointelegraph, I believe, that we'll dive into with that. But before we get into anything, including the market pulse, I'm going to ask you guys to help me out on the YouTube side. Smash that like for me. Subscribe to the channel if you like my style and content. Of course, that helps a ton. And then on X, let's share this space. Let's get as many people in here as possible. It helps a ton when you guys do that. And then shout out to my abstract, to TikTok, Zora, Rumble, and I believe Twitch is the last one there. I'm not going to forget Spotify as well. Yeah, Spotify. Continually drop your comments and questions in the chat, and I will get to those accordingly. Almond Joy says, GM, Monday people. Yes, I got a case of the Mondays. I feel like everybody does whenever you first start the week off. It's like tough to, get out of the weekend, wake up early. So I got my coffee here. But we're here for it, right? You got to put your boots on and get the day started. But let's start the show off like we always do with the market pulse. And actually, we'll go into an Iran war update. I want to continually do this because what this does is it gives us a gauge on what is happening right now, right? Because we need to keep track. Because one of the things about a conflict right now is that, yes, Bitcoin can respond positively if oil pulls back, but until that conflict is fully, resolved, I think we got to make sure that we're on top of the latest updates, right? So that is what we will start the day off with. So let's get an Iran war update here from CBS News. I like to use CBS. I feel like they're a little bit more balanced, right? Maybe I'm wrong about that. But this is last updated 10:52 Eastern, so about an hour ago, right? But it says Iran war keeps oil prices over $100 with Strait of Hormuz paralyzed despite Trump's demands. And it goes in to say what to know as the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran drives up energy prices. It says oil prices remain over $100 a barrel as President Trump's demand that other countries help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a vital shipping lane Iran has paralyzed for over 2 weeks despite relentless U.S. and Israeli strikes, draws no immediate offers of assistance. So there's also another headline we're going to get into a little bit where Trump is debating on, postponing his meeting with President Xi because of this, right? He wants help with that. And so then it says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says U.S.-Israeli strikes have diminished Iran's missile and drone launches by 90%, but Tehran's attacks continue targeting both Israel and America's Gulf allies. And Iran's top diplomat tells CBS News he sees no reason to negotiate now. So still in the thick of it, it looks, right? Just going back and forth. And the Strait is the biggest part of all of this, right? Because if it continually stays paralyzed and it doesn't open back up, then oil prices will continually surge back over $100 and Bitcoin will most likely pull back. So that is kind of where we are. There is a 1-minute update. It says debris, Iranian missile interceptions hit buildings in East Jerusalem. So Israeli emergency services responded to multiple sites in East Jerusalem on Friday where debris from interceptions of Iranian missiles fell to the ground, damaging several buildings. There were no immediate reports of casualties, but images shared by the National Fire and Rescue Authority showed what the agency said was a large interceptor fragment that hit a residential building in the Silwan neighborhood of East Jerusalem. First responders acted quickly, searched the area, and ruled out the presence of anyone trapped in the debris, the rescue agency said. So, I mean, it reminds me of the situation between Russia and Ukraine, right, where they were, attacking some residential buildings a little bit here and there. So I don't think this is going to be over in the near term, right, in the next 2 weeks or anything like that. So we probably are going to have a drawn out situation. I don't think like Russia and Ukraine necessarily, but I don't think it's going to be resolved in the immediate future here. That's where we are with the Iran conflict over there. It's still happening, and expect for the oil prices to be volatile. And that means, honestly, expect for Bitcoin to be a little bit volatile. But that is what we got there. Let's take a look at the economic calendar to start the market pulse. See what we have this week on the docket. For today, Empire State Manufacturing Survey, not a big deal. Industrial production, capacity utilization, home builder confidence index. And this could be a little bit more, but not really, in my opinion, a big deal for today. Tomorrow, pending home sales is going to be interesting. Last week, we saw some good data for that, right? But Wednesday is the big day. So, whenever there's a big day for the economic calendar for that week, Bitcoin seems to get a little bit back and forth, right? So start off the week strong, head into Wednesday, which is the producer price index for February data. And then you got the core PPI as well, and the PPI year over year. So this is going to be where people are, going to be looking towards, right? The data that comes in for that. And also setups prior to that, because expect volatility, right? It happens every time. After that, you got the FOMC interest rate decision. Obviously, that is a big deal, but it's not really, because most everybody has it priced in already. It's 96% that no changes are going to be made. And then you'll have the press conference after. So this is going to be a big day on Wednesday. Thursday, jobless claims, typical Thursday, right? Nothing big out of this. New home sales, we'll get that information. And then Friday, there's nothing there. So big week for the economic calendar on, the PPI and the Fed talking, because the bigger issue with the Fed meeting is not if he's going to make a change. We already know that that's not going to happen. It's going to be, what is his tone? Is it hawkish or is it dovish? And I'm genuinely curious of what Jay Powell's going to say, because, economic data comes in and it's not too bad, but we're in this conflict now, and he hasn't really talked since we've been in this conflict. So that is where I think people are going to be really paying close attention. Now we are getting closer to, him being replaced. We're about 2 months out for the new Fed chair to come in, and so there's going to be, it's going to be an interesting day on Wednesday. Maybe we'll do something live for that as well. Should be very, very interesting on that one. But that is the economic calendar. Let's check and see how the markets are responding to the conflict and all this stuff. We got Patapoo saying, sup, smash that like and subscribe. Yes, appreciate the support, Patapoo. And he says, a Wednesday rate decision catalyst lined up with the first day of a bear moon. Watch out below. I love the bull and bear moons from Patapoo. Definitely pretty accurate, really, with predicting and forecasting some price action for Bitcoin. So I would pay close attention to that if I were you guys. All right, let's check and see how the markets are responding to the current conflict situation, oil moving, all that stuff, right? Continue to put your questions and comments in the chats, whatever platform you're on. It doesn't matter. I'm checking them all like a command center. I have them all around me. I got like 6 arms. No, I'm just kidding. But all right, let's take a look here. The S&P 500 is up almost a point, almost a full point, up 0.97%. You got the NASDAQ up 1.1%. Dow Jones up 0.8% there. The VIX is pulled back 11.14%. Volatility kicking in for sure. DXY is down a 0.61%. The Russell 2000 up 0.96%. The Mag 7 up 1.5%. No shocker there. I feel like the stronger stocks probably decent day today, right? You got Nvidia up 2.18%. Google up 0.5%. Apple up 1.3%. You got Tesla up 2.14%, and then Netflix pulling back 0.14%. Crypto, Bitcoin up 1%, and then Ethereum up 4.92% there. Precious metals kind of probably taking the worst of it from all of the markets. Gold is back below $5,000, right? Sitting at 4,994, down 0.47%. Silver down 0.05%, sitting at $80. Silver's actually been pretty decent, right? It was very volatile. If you go back a month and a half ago, 2 months, kind of the start of the year, towards the end of the year, last year. But as precious metals has kind of pulled back, silver's actually been a bit more stable, right? Which is shocking because we saw it so volatile before. So it's been hanging around that $80 mark. And then we have oil coming in after that, pulling back 3.43%. And oil is really the asset to continually pay attention to. Oil goes down, Bitcoin goes up. That has pretty much been the correlation with Bitcoin in this Iran war, right? Or conflict. And so you can say that, well, that's probably how all the markets are. Yeah, but Bitcoin, I feel like, is very connected with that right now, right? Even more so. So the volatility, or I should say the impactfulness of oil's price is more geared towards Bitcoin right now. So we're seeing Bitcoin, have a good day today. Oil's pulling back. Let's take a really quick look at what the price of oil is actually, because you see it at like $95 right now a barrel, right? And it got all the way to 115 on March 8th. So about 8 days ago, a little over a week ago, and then it crashed down to $79, and it's worked its way kind of slowly up. But you can see this was extremely volatile on the 5th of March, with oil just really shooting up here, the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th, right? And I think that was more like the shock and awe of the conflict and, the Strait being shut down, people freaking out, that type of thing. And then when it pulled back after this administration said, hey, we're opening them back up, all these things, whatever they had to say to make the markets feel good, it's been more of a gradual pullback up. So I think that's a good sign, right? Because I don't think we're going to see that crazy push back up. And, if it's going to go up, it's going to be like a gradual push up. And then if news is going against, oil going up, for example, opening the Strait and, that getting resolved, then we have a pullback type situation, right? So I think the pullbacks actually could be more volatile for oil going forward than, the pull ups. Now, of course, if there is a huge, it gets extremely more intense out there, yeah, of course, that could change things. But as of right now, the trajectory of what I'm seeing, right? And so we'll see if that that continues. All right. So that is oil for you. And the markets, right? So the markets, really, the U.S. side of markets, not too bad today. Pretty decent, right? Precious metals and oil are the only sector, and now silver is actually in the green, right? So sitting pretty good there. We got another comment here from Rick G. Says, GM fan, long live OnChain Revolution. Long live Rick G. Appreciate you, sir. Keep those comments and questions coming in, guys, and I will get to them. I promise. I promise. All right. Let's get into some headlines today. The first one is, it's always a good start to a week, if you're a bull at least, to liquidate 302.5 million dollars worth of shorts. So that is what was liquidated in the crypto space in the past 24 hours. This was at 6:17 a.m., so about 4 hours ago. But wow, I mean, you saw that strength from Bitcoin kind of finishing the Sunday yesterday and then heading into the early hours of this morning, and a bunch of shorts got liquidated, right? Obviously, most of it's going to be in Ethereum and Bitcoin. As you see here, it's almost even there. $145.9 million in ETH shorts were liquidated, while Bitcoin had 131.4 million. Solana comes in third at 20 million, right there at 20 million. And then you can see it doesn't have the numbers on there. It's, probably pretty substantially smaller. But I wonder what this one is. OTA, other. I guess other. So everything else combined, right? $15.68 million worth of shorts were liquidated yesterday. So, or the past 24 hours, I should say. All right. With that being said, what happens whenever people are bullish? You get $120 billion worth of crypto being added to the crypto market cap in the past 5 days. So, there is a lot of indication that people are getting more bullish on the digital asset space in crypto. There's no shock to that, right? We've talked for the past month and a half about how spring tends to, on a yearly basis, have a period of time where things get bullish for crypto. Bitcoin, some point at the end of February, throughout March or April, there is a bullish, time frame, right? A phase, right? And I think we're kind of in that, but it's tough to be, really confident on that whenever we have a war happening in the Middle East, right? But with that being said, if institutions are the ones that are kind of powering this, then you're going to see stuff like this, right? $120 billion added to crypto market cap, that's huge. That's big for the space. So love to see it. Love to see it. All right. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier about President Trump says he may delay his summit with China's President Xi Jinping as he pressures Beijing to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So it's a bit interesting because the Chinese gets a lot of their oil from Iran, right? And I almost wonder if the Strait not being open affects China like we initially thought, because if China is, taking their time with this, maybe they're getting the oil through some other routes or some other way, right? Or maybe they're, they have reserves or enough to where they can play this geopolitical battle here with the U.S. But Trump is trying to, play his hand here in not necessarily the art of the deal necessarily. He's just trying to, strong arm a little bit. But I think he's learned China and realizes he can't do that, so obviously being obvious about it, because he's not going to get his way with it, right? But this seems to be one of his tactics right here, right? So we'll see if China responds. There's a lot of geopolitical ties right now that's hanging on a thread, or just being affected by this Middle Eastern conflict that's happening right now. So we'll see if he continues with it, see if he gets anywhere with it, right? At the end of the day, opening that back up is economically the best situation for the world, but geopolitically, it's a game of chess. So, all right. I realized that I kind of jumped ahead here and didn't get to the main topic here. So let's actually hit on that real quick, because I do have I have something that I'm using personally to determine if this is going to be a continuation of Bitcoin to the upside. So the main topic of the day is, the headline, right? $353 million liquidated. We talked about that, right? Most of that being shorts. But is Bitcoin's 40-day high the start of something bigger, right? And we've talked about Bitcoin and how it's getting a little bit more bullish, but what to look for to really feel confident that we are coming out of the bear market, right? Now, I don't think that answer to that question about coming out of the bear market is the same answer for this, right? Is there something bigger? Because this is more, in my opinion, shorter term to midterm type situation, right? But I am going to use a chart, and it's the daily chart. It's really simple to determine, hey, is this something that is going to be sustainable, or is this something that we've been kind of dealing with, just ping-ponging off of the resistance and the support here? So I'm pulling up Bitcoin on the daily chart here, okay? So the most important thing is for Bitcoin's daily candle to finish above this resistance level right here, 74,000, I would say, honestly. I would put it at 74,000. We're sitting at 73,898 right now, right? But just to say, even if we finished here, then I would feel pretty good about the rest of this week heading into next week. But with the caveat of does this conflict get bigger? And I think that is trumps any type of charting or anything like that. Is does this conflict get more aggressive? Does it or does it start to wind down, right? I personally don't think it's going to wind down anytime soon. But if you want to look to a technical analysis of perspective here, I would say that if we can finish Bitcoin's daily candle above this resistance level that we've been dealing with, right? If you sit right there, 73,000, right? We've been dealing with it since the 5th of February, right? We haven't been able to finish a daily candle above that. If we finish a daily candle today above that, then we're working with something here. If we can have a continuation tomorrow and finish another candle above that, then we can talk about, okay, Bitcoin is kind of moved into this new level. It's looking to potentially, find another resistance level. And if we were to look at that next resistance level on the daily chart, right, we're talking about this area right here. So right at that $79,000 mark, right? So then we would, shift the resistance, and the support would kind of come and replace here, right? So that is the next move here, in my opinion. If we can't make that, we can't finish today's candle above 73,000. We don't have a continuation tomorrow or even Wednesday. Like if we have a pullback tomorrow and Wednesday we finish another candle above it, then we're in business. That's what I'm looking for. So until then, I would say just let's kind of pump the brakes here. Let's calm down. We've been in this situation before with Bitcoin, right? To where we've gotten to that $74,000 mark and then back to 66 and just ping-ponging in between the support and resistance level, right? So that is what I'm looking for, and that's going to make me feel like, okay, we're about to go into a next potential leg with Bitcoin here. So, it's the larger entities, the centralized exchanges, the market makers, all these big money sources, right? They love to ping pong off of the resistance and support levels, right? And so you need that confirmation, and for me that would be the confirmation: 2 daily candles above the current resistance of 73,000, and then we're trying to figure out, okay, where are we trying to land at for like a sideways type of or sideways before a little bit of a reversal, and then go on to the next resistance level. Hopefully that helps you guys, because that's what I'm looking at. And I always go back to what my bread and butter is, and that is the weekly chart. And you guys, we'll get into that probably a little bit later this week, but that is my guiding light until we reclaim the 50-day moving average on the weekly chart. We're still in the bear market. All right. A couple more comments in here. Oh no. Varying view. What's up, Varying Viewpoint? It's been a minute, man, on YouTube. I know we talk on X quite a bit. Hopefully you're doing well, brother. Rick G says, unfortunately, I was a part of those short statistics. Sorry, that sucks, man. Yeah, and the thing is that, like, I'm sure if you have been shorting for a bit, you've made some pretty good gains on that, right? But as you know, what goes up must come down, what goes down must come up type of situation. And unfortunately, right now, it's tough because I would actually, probably be thinking short, because of the conflict and stuff like that. Oil is, it's logical for you to think that oil is going to continue back up to the, $100 mark and all that stuff. So, or sustain up above $100. Patapoo says, now that all the shorts have been liquidated, I'm even more inclined to believe we're going lower by the week's end. And that's the thing. That was exactly what I was talking about just now, right? These institutions, they love to ping pong between support and resistance. Why? Because they make money. They make fees. They make funding fees. They make market makers make money. The whales, the people that have big money, make money in this industry. Whenever they, liquidate one side, they make people feel confident, and then they're going to liquidate the other side until we're in a cycle reversal, right? Like until we come out of the bear market. And then eventually it still happens that, it happens all the time, but you don't get that continuation of price action until we're officially out of the bear market. Same thing in the bull market. Stan says, was the crypto community canned by the administration? Conned. Yo, I mean, that is 100% fair question, dude. Were we conned by the administration? Okay, so I don't necessarily think we were conned as a community by the administration. I think that the administration probably thought that they could control the digital asset space a lot more than they actually can. Maybe that's more of a, because if you look at like Trump and his family that's involved with it, initially Trump would tweet about Bitcoin and stuff, and you guys remember that, the beginning of 2025, and Bitcoin would shoot up. He would tweet on a Saturday about like the strategic reserve is coming up or something like that, and then Bitcoin would shoot up aggressively, only to come crashing down the next day, like aggressively, right? And I think after a couple times of doing that, they realized, hey, we don't have the ability to like sustain pushes to the upside, right? And I think that was probably the best thing for him to stop doing that kind of stuff, because it wasn't sustaining. It was getting a lot of people wrecked, right? So I don't think the crypto community got conned necessarily. Who I think is probably more responsible for making us feel like things were going to go crazy, the administration, but also the huge entity leaders of our space, Brian Armstrong's, the Winklevoss twins, and all of these, CZ and all that stuff, because they made us feel, I feel like they made us feel really bullish about what's about to happen and all these things. And I get it, you had Charles Hoskinson as well from Cardano that has putting all those type of statements out, and then he genuinely feels kind of like dumbfounded of like, how was 2025 so bad in that way? So, but anyways, hopefully that kind of answers your question, but that was a good question there. And then Richie says, yeah, my $100 account got wrecked. Well, at least it wasn't, crazy amount there. But all right, let's get back into some news here before we get into the price action for the rest of the day, right? Let's see. Hit on that. All right. So, I mean, we all know that this is happening here. We all know that this is happening here. And it's that Michael Saylor is continually buying Bitcoin. Surprise, surprise. Saylor's buying Bitcoin. It says Strategy. Let me share my screen. Strategy bought 22,337 Bitcoin. So $1.6 billion worth of Bitcoin. Now the company holds 761,068 total Bitcoins. Man, that's so crazy. I saw somebody on my timeline say that, Strategy is almost kind of like a Bitcoin central bank in a sense, right? I mean, 239, 38 and some change thousand Bitcoin away from having 1 million Bitcoin. Absolutely nuts. I mean, can this guy lose at this point? I don't think so. I mean, if someone wanted to crash a Strategy and all that stuff, like there's so many other huge entities that are involved with this now that they don't want Bitcoin to crash to like $5,000 or anything like that. And it would have to crash substantially for Saylor to get liquidated there. But following up that, guess what? The East Bitcoin strategy, version of Strategy in the East, the Japanese company Metaplanet, raised $531 million in potential capital to buy more Bitcoin. Why are they doing that? Because Bitcoin is cheap right now, right? So Metaplanet actually took some time off buying Bitcoin, probably because they didn't have the capital because they're raising it. But I think they're starting to feel a little bit of FOMO in terms of, man, these are such cheap prices. We can average down type of situation. Saylor's buying continually. Why shouldn't we? I feel like Metaplanet is definitely a lot more strategically organized as a company than Strategy. Strategy has their CEO and all that stuff. Yeah, they do. But I just feel like Metaplanet definitely is a lot more tame when it comes to like buying aggressively. They were buying very aggressively in 2024 and 2025, so it's not like they don't have that in them, but I feel like they're more structured with that kind of stuff, because like everybody knows Saylor, right? But Metaplanet's people, I'm not sure what their CEO's name is actually, but anyways, they're raising money to buy more Bitcoin, right? No shocker there. All right, I've got a couple more comments in here. Courtney Johnson says, peace, bro. What is up, Courtney Johnson? Good to see you. Myself says, con artist gonna con. Yeah, I mean, it's true, dude. It is true. And, like when the digital asset space was a lot smaller, you can go back to 2017. I mean, there's respect there for like Brian Armstrong and stuff. You go back to 2013, like he started Coinbase, right? Like in those early years to be able to buy Bitcoin for easier for regular normies, which at the time there wasn't a ton of normies getting into it, but he had the platform there for that to happen. So, from a respect standpoint a bit, but like money changes people, right? I truly feel like that is a true statement for the most part. Certain people that don't change by money, I think they are a diamond in the rough type of people. But you saw Armstrong take a picture with Larry Fink last week on X, and I mean, it's happening. These centralized exchange founders and owners, they're so ecstatic that like TradFi has accepted them. Because now you can take the cap off of what their value is, truly, right? I mean, people are talking about CZ's value. It's absolutely crazy how much his net worth is. It's absolutely nuts. And then myself says, by their fruit, you will recognize them. That is a very true statement. Couldn't be more truer. Appreciate the comments there. All right, let's see what we got next here. Bithumb, which is the largest Korean exchange. I believe they're the largest. Maybe they're the second largest. But South Korea's government fines Bithumb 36.8 billion won. And if you watch Squid Games, then you can probably calculate that in your head. No, I'm just kidding. I'm half Korean. I can do that because I don't remember what a 1,000 won is worth these days. It's probably less than $1. It used to be a little bit more than $1. I think it's less than $1 now. But anyways, $27 million, they calculated it for us, and imposes a 6-month partial business suspension over AML violations. So I believe this was the issue of one of their employees, sending the wrong amount of Bitcoin out or something. You guys remember that? And so it looks like they are getting punished for that. So that is kind of an update on that situation. But yeah, so, South Korea's government, they tried, I feel like they mimicked the US government a lot, right? I was in the military, I was in the army, I was stationed over there actually on the DMZ for a year. It was probably the least fun year of my life. I was on the JSA, so I was about, I want to say like 2 miles away from the DMZ. And but that was, Korea in general is fun. But the government has, because the U.S. kind of really helped the South Korean government reestablish themselves in their economy, really, after the Korean War, the government's very similarly set up to how the United States is, right? So probably going to see, both governments act very similarly. So we'll see some probably fines coming out from, our regulatory entities as well, for exchanges that commit stuff like this. All right. Digital asset investment products saw 1.06 billion inflows for the third straight week, right? So 3 weeks in a row, we see the digital asset investment products in the positive. Look at this, though. I mean, when was this? This was 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. So about 2 months ago, things were dumping hard out of here. You're looking at January, about mid-January, these big dumps came out of the digital asset industry. Then it started getting smaller. Now we're on the positive side, right? So, but look, this looks actually like, this looks reverse version of this. And then we had 3 that looks identical to this. And then we had 2 down. I don't know how it's going to play out. It's not based off of patterns or nothing like that necessarily. But, this is probably why we see market caps looking stronger right now, right? So, and then the ETF inflow. Ooh, there's that. Well, I guess we'll start that after the price action, because I do want to get into the price action there. All right, we're going to get into the crypto price action with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the crypto bubbles. If you have an altcoin that you want me to check out, just drop it in the chat and I will pull it up. And let's start with Bitcoin like we always do on the hour chart. Let's take a looky. Bitcoin sitting at 73,674 US dollars. That's looking pretty strong for Bitcoin, right? You do see a little double top here though on this hour chart. Little double top. I don't really like patterns too much on the hour chart. I feel like it's too short of a time. Well, I guess not, because But anyways, that is what I see right now. Let's take a look here, starting with the MACD indicator. So it looks like we're coming out of that buy pressure from this morning, late last night into this morning for Bitcoin. It's not really strong into the sell pressure. We're on the second sell pressure hour MACD candle. It is getting a little bit stronger, but not showing too much strength here. The stochastics also just crossed over to the oversold territory. So it's sitting at 15.55 on the stochastic RSI. That 20-point mark is the official oversold territory. We just got here, right? So this is something that could be kind of like a drawn out situation a little bit. Next 2 to 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, maybe sideways with a little bit of downtrend. But yeah, so I do feel like we've kind of, had that push to the upside. Now we're seeing a little bit of a reversal on the on this hour chart right now. It's not, like I said, it's not aggressive yet. It tried to get aggressive though, because you can see this wick on the last hour candle here. It got all the way down to 73,000 here. We're back already to 73.6, right? So that's showing me that this run had some strength in it for sure, right? But yeah, so what I'm seeing is a weak sell pressure session started, probably sideways with a little bit of downtrend, unless some bad news comes out of nowhere and then we start to tank pretty hard. But as of right now, it's trying to go into a sell price recession and it's having a little bit of a hard time. But we'll see. We'll see how the rest of today plays out, because it's going to play into tomorrow and heading into Wednesday. Wednesday's a big day, right? The Fed meeting, all that good stuff. Let's check the 4 hour. The 4 hour give us more of a 2 to 3 day forecast here, and see what's happening on the 4 hour chart. The 4 hour chart for Bitcoin looks like it's losing a little bit of that buy pressure session, right? Just a little cracks right now in it. Nothing saying complete reversal just yet. But you are seeing this uptrend that got back to that resistance level that we've had trouble, just finishing above, right? And the last time we had trouble of like sustaining above 74,000 was the 4th of March was the last time we visited these levels, right? Now, like I said, the daily to me is the most important chart to give me that conviction to say, hey, Bitcoin wants to go to 75. If we finish the daily candle above 70, like 74.5 or 75,000, maybe we'll play with some, some bullishness heading into Wednesday, which be dangerous anyways, because it's going to be volatile there, right? But the 4 hour is breaking down a little bit. We'll see, what the rest of today does on that hour chart to maybe, start to actually break this down. If we get back below like 72,000, this will start to crack it even more, right? But again, heading into Wednesday, I'm expecting volatility here. And then let's see this daily chart. This is the one I was talking about. It's the most important one right now. If you're wondering if we're going to have a continuation with Bitcoin, right? A daily candle has to finish above at least 73,000, right? If we can finish above 74,000, that's bullish, right? And then we'll see what happens tomorrow. Now, this buy pressure session for the daily chart for Bitcoin's been intact since the middle of February. So you're looking about a full month right now. Is it overextended? Probably, or starting to be, right? A bit. But every time I think it's overextended, it's got some cracks in it, it shows strength again. But again, this is kind of, in my opinion, probably just they're building this up to head into Wednesday, right? Finish above 73 for sure. And then 74.5, 75, if that would be huge confidence, right? If the daily candle can finish around that area. So that is the targets, really, if you're a bull and you want this to continue. All right, so that is Bitcoin, guys. Let's quickly look at Ethereum and see what's happening with ETH, because ETH is looking pretty decently strong. ETH is looking pretty decently strong here, right? On the hour chart, it's starting to close up the buy pressure session, though. We're sitting at 22.85, right? We had struggles getting above 21.50 the past week, but we're at a good spot. Bitcoin showed strength and Ethereum's following it, right? But it's not into sell pressure yet, though. So it's a little bit behind Bitcoin here, right? So we're still in this buy pressure session, which does look like it's come to a close, though. So maybe we'll see a pullback here with the ETH in the next 2 hours, right? 2 to 4 hours, a little bit of a pullback. But it's not officially out of buy pressure session yet on the hour. Let's take a look at the 4. The 4 hour looks pretty good for ETH, looks pretty strong, not seeing any cracks here. So again, it's a little bit behind Bitcoin in that sense. The daily, very similar situation to Bitcoin, extended, but looking pretty strong here with the extension. And we'll see if we can finish the daily for ETH. That resistance that it needs to finish above is 22.45. Right around there, right around 22.45. Actually, no, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. It is 21.30. 21.30, yeah, because I was talking earlier about how it's had trouble to get above 21.50. I think finishing above 21.50 would be big, but I mean, look, it's going, unless there's going to be a huge pullback for the day, I think that's going to happen, right? That's most likely going to happen. So ETH looking good, actually. All right, so that's Bitcoin and ETH on the 3 different time frames there. Let's take a look at the crypto bubbles here and see how the alt market is performing. Let me do a little quick refresh. All right, so it's green. It's green. My favorite color, green, because my favorite color, money. Looking at about 98% grain, maybe with the 2 to 3% pullback, right? So everything is deciding, hey, we're going to join the party. Pepe being the biggest winner in the top 100, pulling up with a positive 17.7% to the upside. You got FET coming in next, up 14.5%. Caspa coming in after that, up almost 11% there, up 10.8% for Caspa. And then Layer Zero. This is, Layer Zero is in the news a lot with institutions love the Layer Zero. Layer Zero is, the bridge for everything, basically. They have a bridge for Bitcoin. They have a bridge for all the EVM, Solana, everything. They're up 8.8% on the day. Polkadot, rare to see Polkadot in one of the top gainers, but it's up 10.7%. You got Bonk up 9.4%. Hyperliquid up 5%. XRP up 6%. XRP needs to go on a run. And you got ADA, Cardano up 8% here. Aptos up 7.6%. Arbitrum up 5.4%. Ethereum up a whopping 9.1% for ETH. That's big for ETH. You got Sky, one of the RWA tokens here, up 5.8%. And then Pengu up 7.5%. Near Protocol up 5.3%. Solana up 6.6%. Man, these Ethereum classics and Bitcoin Cash and stuff like that, it's crazy. They're still in the top 100. Ethereum classics up 7%. Bitcoin up 2.8%. The stuff that pulled back in the top 100, you got River pulling back 5.8%. It was having some green days while the rest of the market had some red days last week, so no shocker here. Trump coin down 3.4%. It also had a couple big green days last week because they announced they're going to have another dinner gala. Oh God, I hope that doesn't turn into a disaster, but yeah. So anyways, Kite is down 3.2%, and then Maker pulling back 1.3% here. So that is the top 100 for you guys. Let's take a look at the top 200 here. Dog Whiff Hat, meme coin on Solana up 12.7%. Track up almost 20% here. Cubic up 11.1%. Fluid up 9.8%. And Fartcoin up 10.2%. Can the the trenches start to build momentum back? We'll see. That is one area that I feel like is going to probably be one of the hardest sectors to pull back up, but we'll see. I mean, I feel like memes and all that stuff will always be a part of our space, but there's just not a bunch of interest from the outside with that. But Farcoin's up 10.4%. So what else do we have? Apepe up 6.2%. Jito up 3.2%. Telcoin up 5.2%. SPX up 7.6%. Eigenlayer up 7.4%. PulseX up 4.5%. Sonic up 8.4%. Anything else in here that sticks out to me? Let's see. I don't think so. The stuff that pulled back in the top 200, you got what is this? Aave down 7%. Syrup, which is Maple, down 1.2%, and then you got 2Z down 3.6%. Pippin pulling back 2.4%. XCN down 2.4%, and then H down 1.4%, with Neo down 4% there. So that's Bitcoin, ETH, and the crypto bubbles for you guys. All right. Let's move on to a little bit more news here to see what else is happening in the space. All right. BlackRock bought 8.7 thousand Bitcoin last week, marking inflows every day for the first time since October. I like that it's, marking inflows every day for the first time since October, but what does that bring to your mind when I say that? October 10th comes to mind for me, and I hate that because I'm just like, oh, positive, but then first time since October. Well, it was the biggest liquidation day of our industry's history, right? So I don't know if they should have reworded that or not, but, BlackRock's buying Bitcoin. That is what's happening right now. And then you can see the ETF inflow as well for last week. So very strong, very, very strong. You see right here, ETF inflows. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Sol spot ETF saw net inflows last week, while XRP spot ETF saw net outflows. Yeah, so XRP, very interesting. I feel like it's kind of detached itself a little bit from the three giants here. And you see Bitcoin 767 million of net inflows last week, really solid week there. ETH 160.82 million, pretty solid for ETH, right? Solana, it's pretty weak, 10.7 million inflows though, at least. And then you had XRP with a negative $28.07 million flow for last week. So see if XRP can pick things back up for the ETF side of things, right? But all right, let's see what we got here. I mean, this week also is very important to pay attention to the ETF inflows for the first couple of days, because that will tell you also what these institutions are kind of thinking, right? What they're telling their clients as well. So pay attention to that stuff, because it really did forecast this run up from like 2 months ago, right? So, all right, where are we at? I just want to make sure I'm not lost here. How did I lose that thing? Okay, there it is. Yikes. I hate moving these around because it's so... Okay. All right, so $867 billion, Bernstein says Bitcoin outperformed gold and equities during the last week's Middle East tensions. So that is something that's very interesting, right? So this is kind of what I was talking about with the intro of the show when I said the perspectives of Bitcoin and gold are changing just a little bit here. But it's still a little confusing, right? Because you're like, okay, so is Bitcoin also a kind of like a lifeboat, right, during geopolitical macro situations? But let's get into it, because there is an article actually written here by Cointelegraph that gets into it, and it's how Bitcoin and gold reacted differently to the Iran war shock, right? I kind of skipped through to where the meat and potatoes were here. It says gold's mixed performance as a safe haven asset. At first, gold reacted as expected during a geopolitical crisis. Demand increased as investors sought safety amid the uncertainty. As the conflict worsened, gold prices climbed higher while traders shifted funds into traditional safe haven assets. However, the upward movement in gold did not last long. Gold prices later dropped significantly when the US dollar strengthened and US Treasury yields rose. These factors often make the precious metal less attractive since it pays no interest or dividends. At one point, gold fell more than 1%, even as tensions continued to escalate. This highlighted how broader economic pressures, such as changes in interest rates or currency strength, can sometimes override safe haven buying in the short term. Such swings demonstrated that even a long-established crisis hedge like gold can experience temporary ups and downs when investors focus on liquidity needs or react to shifts in macroeconomic conditions. Okay, that's very interesting, right? So they were like, well, I can't make money on my gold, even though it was going up, but then it kind of chilled out because it hit kind of aggressively to the upside, right? So they were taking their money and putting it elsewhere. It says why investors sometimes sell gold during the crisis. Kind of talked about that, right, with the yield here. All right, let's go into the Bitcoin's reaction to the crisis. And it says Bitcoin's reaction to the crisis, volatile yet resilient. Bitcoin responded differently from gold during the conflict. In the opening phase of the geopolitical escalation, cryptocurrencies experienced sharp volatility as traders broadly reduced risk exposure and de-risked their portfolios. That said, Bitcoin recovered after the initial volatility, February 8th, 2026, when the war began. Bitcoin reached a low of $63,106 by March 5th, 2026. It had rebounded to 73,156 and then followed a steady trajectory to 71,226 by March 10th. Bitcoin's price path signals renewed investor interest in alternative hedges against economic and geopolitical instability. Historically, Bitcoin's price action has remained closely linked to overall market sentiment and prevailing liquidity conditions rather than being driven solely by geopolitical risks. So, that's kind of like the whole point where everybody's saying Bitcoin's performing better than gold during this conflict. What's going on, right? And I think this last part here we'll wrap it up here, but the dollar has something to do with it. And it says the role of the U.S. dollar strength and the key factor affecting both assets was the performance of the U.S. dollar during the conflict. As investors scrambled for liquidity and perceived stability, the dollar strengthened significantly since gold is priced in dollars on global markets. A rising dollar generally exerts downward pressure on gold prices by making it more expensive for holders of other currencies. Bitcoin is also sensitive to dollar dynamics. When capital flows towards traditional safe havens such as cash and reserve currencies during periods of uncertainty, demand for cryptocurrencies can soften temporarily, contributing to price weakness. These interconnected factors, including dollar strength, liquidity preferences, and risk-off sentiment, help explain the performance of gold and Bitcoin in this scenario. They also clarify why neither gold nor Bitcoin delivered a clean, sustained safe haven rally during the initial phase of the conflict, despite their differing long-term characteristics. Right? So obviously oil has, a lot to do with this as well. But as the U.S. gets more and more involved with Bitcoin too, we're going to be learning, how people perceive Bitcoin truly in these geopolitical conflicts and macroeconomic, hard times, right? We're learning right now that Bitcoin is looking pretty strong in a market that most people, up until we got into the conflict, the U.S. got into the conflict, would expect it to crash pretty hard. I was actually shocked that it wasn't playing the role. The Iran war wasn't playing the role of what's it called? Black Swan, right? A Black Swan event, right? And very impressed by Bitcoin's strength during this entire time. In fact, it's actually shown that it's gone to the upside, right? The trajectory, right? So definitely impressed by Bitcoin on that. Superfan says, GM. Joko for crypto says, GM, what is up, fellas? The Ackman 135 says, X stock on Kraken. They're talking about tokenizing stocks, and then Kraken listed Fractal Bitcoin. They talk about using multiple chains to tokenize. Hey, man, look, Fractal, big move by them getting on Kraken. That's impressive. Look, you got to look at some of these tokens that got on there. Look, Merlin Chain got on there, right? Towards the end of last year. It's all strategic. What is the friction to be able to get on Kraken? If there's a clear pathway to be able to get on there, it's not necessarily easy, but you got to, start at a certain time to where, you have time, the length of time ahead of you to get in. And that takes a lot of planning and precision planning. And Fractal did it, right? So kudos to them. We'll see if, what happens and what comes out of this. And I do think that Kraken is in this position to where you want to be listed on Kraken. And why? It's because they just got the first Fed master account out of all the crypto entities, right? They have access to the Fed. I know myself, you probably don't love that because but this is where this is capitalism, right? In America. And this is where the majority of the value of crypto is going to be. I mean, I think that's a fact. I do think that we have our kind of niche areas to where they can grow a lot of, value as well. I 100,000% believe that the Bitcoin ecosystem and ordinals and stuff is going to be one of those awesome culture niche sectors of digital assets that is collectible, right? You get that feel of when you're at a card show, like I was last weekend. You're around the tables that are in the space, they know what they're talking about. I think the Bitcoin ecosystem is going to be like that with the assets, and those assets are going to be valued very high, but it's going to be personal. It's going to be more personal than it is going to be like strictly monetary, type of situation. So I look forward to that, though. I love that kind of community because it's genuine, right? And we'll see that. I'm very sure of it. PeersNet says, bullish. What is up, PeersNet? Yeah, I'm very, very bullish on, the future of the space. Someone came out and said, I think it was on a TikTok. I got to give him credit. Next time, hopefully I can go and find him. But he said that the current Web3 space is very much like how Web2 was in the late 90s, early 2000s. I've said that several times on here, but it is even more so true right now because during that period, there was 95% of companies that were just driving on the .com hype. They died off, right? And then the 5% that remained, really solid. And then an influx of really solid companies started to come in over the next 10 to 15 years. And so that's where opportunity is going to be here for us, guys. We just got to be in the know, constantly researching, learning together. It's going to be good. It's going to be good for the space, guys. It's going to be good for the space. All right. Let me make sure I get back to some of these comments. OCM Fever says, hey, hi, Yagobi. What exchange would you recommend for ordinals now that Magic Eden is out of the game? Satflow, Osura. So Osura, I remember looking at Osura, and the last time I checked them, because we had Amanda, which was one of the not founders, but I think she's like a C-level like executive for the whole OCM group. Let me pull up Osura real quick. But I think Statflow is solid, from what I've seen. I haven't used it personally. Buying things, I've been on there, I've messed with it and stuff like that. I do think Ordinal Hive is really solid as well. I think that the founder talks to everybody in the space, so if you have questions, you can reach out to them. I think Danny is awesome, and Amanda and the team from OCM Danny's contributed to the Bitcoin ecosystem a ton, with just teaching people about recursive inscriptions and doing a ton of stuff. So, I definitely want to check theirs out. It does look like it's more towards like artist and that type of ordinal style, which, there's, I think that definitely a, niche in our space for that too. Gamma kind of does that as well. But from last that I remember with Osura, they did some high-end stuff too, like the Osbury egg and all that Bugatti stuff. So very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff there. Courtney says, did Fractal go up due to news? I'm sure they did. I do think it's a wrapped fractal because you have to do that for the EVM side. Or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know, Biakman. But yeah. And then Courtney says, still got a bag. Yeah. Look, the Unisat guys was a big part of kind of the fractal thing, and they got a lot of funding for it. So we've seen what Unisat can do when they put their mind to something, right? So we'll see. All right. Awesome. Keep the comments coming, guys. Love the conversation for sure. Want to make sure I'm not missing anybody else out on the other platforms here. All right, let's go to the next thing here. All right, so that is kind of wrap it up with the Bitcoin and gold stuff, right? So we're learning how countries are viewing Bitcoin, and this is a big bullish positive thing, by the way, in my opinion. All right, the next thing here, this is not so bullish, but I think it might be overblown a bit. And this is the AI data center gold rush sparks debate over impact on Bitcoin mining. There's always going to be Bitcoin mining. There's always going to be, because of the future potential, the future trajectory of the price of Bitcoin, right? So I want to get that statement out. Like, there's going to be enough Bitcoin miners, and there should, there's going to be enough protection over Bitcoin mining, I would say. Like, it's not going to be an issue. I truly don't think that. But let's see what the rest of the media space thinks, like Cointelegraph here, and they say they wrote a quick article here, titled "AI Data Center Gold Rush Sparks Debate Over Impact on Bitcoin Mining." It says crypto trader Rand Neuner said Bitcoin could be at risk. Of course he did. If AI continues to pull miners away from the network, but others disagree. A new debate has emerged over whether a continued shift by Bitcoin miners towards artificial intelligence could impact the network's security and its role as a store of value. While some argue that miners leaving the network would leave it more susceptible to a 51% attack, others argue it will simply trigger the Bitcoin network to rebalance itself as designed, making it enticing for miners again. And then he comes in and says, AI has killed Bitcoin forever. I think that's such an overkill statement. My God. That was Rand Neuner that said that on Sunday, arguing that it's become Bitcoin's mining's biggest competitor because both industries compete for electricity. Sure. I mean, for medium and some medium, but small miners for sure. I know they've been doing this since like 2023. 2024 is not new, and it was more of the smaller miners that were just not able to make enough to maintain their smaller warehouses, right? Just didn't make sense for them business wise. But for these bigger ones, it will always make sense for them because they're the entities that deal with 10-year interest loans and that type of stuff. They're getting funded by that kind of stuff, right? They can wait 5 years for Bitcoin to go up 300 or not 300, but 50%, 80%, 100 and something percent, right? So for them, there will always be. Now, the 51% attack thing, I just think that there's, probably bigger, competition needs to come in, which if Bitcoin's at $1 million in, let's say, 15 years or 10 years or however long it takes, right? They're going to do it. Anyways, it goes on to continually says AI is willing to pay much for it. He explained that Bitcoin mining revenue is per megawatt is around $57 to $129, but AI data center revenue per megawatt is up to 8 times higher. Yeah, I mean, it is. But you know what? What's going to happen is once a lot of these big institutions, Tesla's going to do what they said. They said by the end of this year, they're going to put, solar energy, panel type of whatever their transformers or whatever they are going to be in space, because the sun is directly right there. They're going to be powering AI so we can have the water be sustainable here and all that stuff. So I don't know what happens then. I'm just saying. But anyways, so to finish this up here, it says Bitcoin energy demand is a variable. And it says, however, Neuner argued that falling hash rates, which are down 14.5% since their October peak, mean that there are fewer miners to secure the network and a higher potential for a 51% attacks. They're just, the people in charge are going to make sure that it happens. The sailors, the Larry Finks, those type of people. It says this has all happened before during bear markets, and automatic network difficulty adjustments usually compensate for it. Yeah, we've been here before, right? To where they have to cut off their miners before they didn't have AI. They just literally turned them off, like the smaller ones and stuff like that. So I think this is completely blown out of proportion. Probably some clickbait material for a good old Rand Neuner. But yeah, I think we're going to be just fine with that. All right. We are running over quite a bit here. So let me see if there's anything that is sticking out. Well, I guess two things I do want to cover here. The CEO of Tether, Paolo Ardonio, says Tether AI team will release a true breakthrough this coming week. So no shocker that Tether's involved with the AI, first of all. Secondly, what is this, right? I tried to look it up and didn't really see too much, but QVAC is something that's coming up. This is Tether announced QVAC, short for Quantum Verse Automatic Computer, development platform for what they call infinite intelligence, designed to run AI agents and models directly on local devices without any dependence on centralized cloud services or API keys. Ooh, I mean, I do feel like, the whole API key business model is going to die. Because why would if I have money to buy an NVIDIA super PC right now, I forgot what they're called, but they're amazing. They're like, I think $3,500, and I can run fully local LLMs that I don't have to pay APIs for. And now that they're doing small model LLMs that are pretty much just as effective, I can put multiple on there. I can put teams of this LLM's better for this than that. But anyways, it looks like this is what Tether's getting into, which is interesting because this is hardware, right? So they're getting into AI hardware. Man, Tether is literally the everything company. Those futuristic movies where there's like one company that like runs the world. Might be Tether. We'll see. I'm excited to see what actually comes out from their team, though, because I want to look into it. It might be something that I might end up getting. Right? That could be awesome if it makes things cheaper, and that is the biggest thing. The API model being able to, that is going to go away. I truly think so. Here's an update from Aave about with their post mortem of the $50 million swap incident. It's just a short little statement here, but Aave released a post-mortem on the $50 million swap incident and announces Aave Shield feature to automatically block swaps with over 25% price impact. I don't mean to laugh because that sucks for the guy that lost that much money, but I would be so mad reading this if I was that person. Not like, I get it, it's his fault, he's that's how crypto works. You're in charge of your own monetary value, and that's the whole point, right? But just reading it would make me mad because I would be like, well, that doesn't bring my $50 million back. And well, I think total, because he lost 50.4 million. He had 50.4, so 50,436,000. What he got back was like 329 Aave, which came out to be like 35,000. So just take the 1,000 out, right? So 50.4 million is what he lost, but he got $600,000 in fees refunded from Aave because they're like, hey, we'll refund you the fee part because they don't have the money no more because all those bots that were looking for they hit their lottery. By the way, those bots that are looking for the price impact and the what is it called? The swap. I can't even think of the word right now. It's not price impact, but what is it called? It starts with an S. Is whenever you adjust the flippage. Gosh dang it! Why did my brain go blank just now? Anyways, so he would have been saved if he would have been a part of this now, but he loses 49 point something, 49.8 million dollars. Sucks. But anyways, I think that is going to wrap up the show, guys. It was definitely a really fun one today. Got a couple last comments in here from Superfan, but I think he's talking to OCM Fever. This last one, he says, NVIDIA's DGX, Spark, 220 or 128 gigabytes of memory, still limiting compared to the huge API-based models. Yeah, but I have heard that. I've heard that like it takes a lot for you to run something that's comparable to that. But maybe, I've put the small coin model on a local machine. It does pretty good. It can code, it can do all those things, right? But it's slower and stuff like that. And then the Ackman says Fractal went down when it was listed. Crazy. I mean, bear market, right? Bear market. And we'll see what else those guys come out with, because I think this is probably a big motivating thing for Fractal, by the way. getting listed on Kraken. They feel like they got some respect. I had a chance to meet Spencer. He's like, what? I don't know if he's still the lead of Fractal, but I met him in Nashville at the Bitcoin conference. Really awesome guy. Him and his team. We had him on the OnChain Revolution show and stuff. So I think the future of the Bitcoin ecosystem, very, very bright. But I appreciate all of the comments and questions, guys. Amazing show. You guys are awesome. I do want to show you guys the updated website real quick because I did. And if there's any suggestions or anything you guys have, of the website, let me know. I'll definitely add them. But it's a lot more news based, right? So if you go to onchainrevolution.io, you can just go into the different news categories here. You can kind of just go through the past 5 latest articles as well. They're down here as well, and they just feed through, right? I've been working on the X account as well, so trying to get as much information to you guys as quickly as possible, right? And so there's different tools on here as well, so you can check it out at onchainrevolution.io. Other than that, appreciate you guys. Thought you guys couldn't do the show. It's been awesome. Don't forget, Wednesday we have Big Noodle on at 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern. AI segment. We go hard into that. Thursday co-host the Ordinal Hive Spaces as well. And so I appreciate all you guys. And until tomorrow, peace.